The impact of sea level rise on coastal communities is already recognizable, from more frequent tidal flooding to more intense storm surge during hurricanes. The damage from these kinds of flooding and storm surge events will only get worse as sea levels creep up and up. My name's Ian Bolliger. I'm a climate data scientist with the Energy and Climate Practice at Rhodium Group and lead researcher on the Climate Impact Lab's work on the coastal impacts of climate change. Sea levels have risen about 20 centimeters since 1900, and even if we were to cut emissions to zero today, they would rise another 30 or 40 centimeters by the end of the century. One thing we're still trying to understand at a global level is exactly how people and physical infrastructure are distributed along coastlines around the world. We need to know where people are living along coastlines, what elevation they're living at, and how much local sea levels are expected to change at each of those locations. To estimate the impacts of sea level rise at a global scale, we apply a model called the Coastal Impacts and Adaptation Model, which helps understand how individual coastal segments may respond and adapt to climate change, as well as measuring the costs that they incur, both from the impacts of sea level rise and those adaptation measures that they take. In sparsely populated regions, the optimal approach might be relocating a population, whereas in other more densely populated areas such as New York City, the optimal approach might be building protections and allowing the population to remain in place. In reality, at a local scale, these decisions are going to involve additional complexity. Where are these relocating populations going to go? What sort of protections should we build? And can we get away with some natural barriers, such as increasing the extent of mangroves or wetlands to provide a storm surge barrier? Areas where all three of these factors combine to contribute to particularly high impacts are going to be low-lying areas with low-income populations that happen to experience high amounts of local sea level rise. We estimate the combined costs of sea level rise and any adaptation measures that are taken to avoid sea level rise impacts. This means that we cover costs of inundation and abandonment of physical capital that may fall under rising seas, the costs of relocating populations, the costs of loss of wetlands, the costs of building and maintaining protective barriers, and finally, we measure the costs of physical infrastructure damage as well as loss of life from tidal and storm surge flooding events. To learn more about the social cost of carbon and how we estimate the coastal impacts of climate change, visit our website at impactlab.org.